From envisioning Rodriguez as Captain Trudy to making a martyr out of her, here's why James Cameron regrets his decision over Michelle Rodriguez's death. He is, without a doubt, one of the best directors in Hollywood, and he's always been confident about his directorial decisions. But looking back 10 years down the road, the Oscar-winning director regrets the decision to end Captain Trudy's journey in the original Avatar film.
I played Trudy Chacon. She's basically a chopper pilot who works for the company. She's kind of like the transporter of the scientist to various locations.
In his defense, tough times required tougher decisions to be made, and I think Trudy's death was one of them, because no matter how much Cameron regrets it now, at the time, it probably seemed like a good idea. Killing Trudy off was done to add a sense of danger and loss to the film.
I'm Trudy. I fly all the science sorties, and this here's my baby. Hold on a second.
After all, this movie wasn't set in Utopia, and what better way to remind the viewers of this than by killing off a beloved character, and as brutally as possible at that. I mean, she may have dodged a massive helicopter shooting a dozen miniguns at her face. But then she got blasted by rockets, exploded, and fell 1,000 feet into a forest full of creatures hell-bent on killing all humans. There was no chance at all for her to survive, but it was a glaring reminder of her heroic sacrifice.
Right there!
I'm not the only one with a gun.
Keep her in your sights.
I'm on all paws.
That's it!
And I think Cameron's decision wasn't made entirely in vain. While I shed tears as I watched her fall to her death, it made me love her even more.
Rogue One is hit. I'm going in. Sorry, Jake.
And so did our director. His attachment to the character came from a place of admiration, which didn't come out of thin air. The Fast and Furious actress revealed that Cameron wrote Trudy's character from an inspiration that hit him, and on one of his adventure trips for that matter. As it turns out, that Cameron was impressed by a female pilot who was flying the helicopter and made a crazy difficult maneuver off of a glacier. And that's when inspiration hit him. If it hadn't, then the movie probably would have turned out a lot differently. His light bulb lit up when he realized that this would be a great character to incorporate into his science fiction film, Avatar. That's the moment when Captain Trudy Chacon was born. The Titanic director shared that when he wrote the character, none other than Rodriguez popped into his head. And eventually, the role was hers to play. Yep, that's right. The role for which she didn't even audition was hers on a silver platter. Cameron believed in her when no one else did, so it sounds right that he regrets his decision of killing her off the movie, because of the moment of inspiration he invested in the character. I mean, every writer's holy grail is the epiphany that strikes them and produces such liberating characters. For him, it was Trudy.
I don't feel these tree-hugging traitors deserve steak.
Big at steak? That's let me see that.
Yeah, you know what that is. Down.
Trudy!
All the way down. Max!
As for Rodriguez's casting, Cameron didn't just take a chance on her. In fact, he actively rooted for her to play the part of Trudy, because he'd seen something in her beyond her controversies, which I'm glad for, since I don't think any other actress could portray Trudy with the sincerity and integrity that she did. And Cameron seems to feel this way too. That's why he regrets killing her off in the first movie. I think he knows that they could have done a lot more with this character combined, which is why I think if Cameron knew that there was a chance of turning this film into a multi-part, he would have kept her around. And that's exactly why he regrets her death so much, because that sliver of hope flew away with it. But all that's in the past now, just like any chance of Rodriguez's return to the movie. But I believe the character was the best thing that could have happened to the movie, because let's face it, Trudy's death didn't just impact the film, it affected the fans too. Avatar showed us a badass female fighter with a heart of gold, and we were all rooting for her to succeed. So her death was a massive hit to those of us who loved her. I, for one, was super stoked when I heard about the release of Part 2. This meant that Trudy had a chance of returning to the franchise. After all, in the words of the actress herself, Nobody's really dead in science fiction, but all these hopes died as the release grew closer and closer, and still, no word from Rodriguez or the production staff was heard, until a little birdie mentioned she was seen on set as the sequel was filming. When this news came out, Twitter and Reddit were in a flurry, thinking about all the possible reasons she was there. Of course, she'd shown up too late in the filming for this to mean anything significant, so some fans thought this meant a cameo appearance or a flashback might come up, while others thought she was going to foreshadow something for the upcoming third part. And on they continue, until Rodriguez dashed the flames of these speculations herself, with the actual release of the movie, which showed she wasn't present in any way, shape, or form. What a letdown. However, even though she wasn't a part of the sequel, the idea wasn't completely lost on the fans. Because of the appearance of characters who presumably died in the first movie, I mean, they found a way to resurrect Quaritch, the main antagonist of the prequel. Even though he was killed by Neytiri, the RDA found a way to permanently transfer human minds into Na'vi bodies. That was mind-blowing to see in the sequel. So ultimately, there was an open window for the return of the courageous captain. I mean, she was the only human fighting for the people of Na'vi, and it turns out James Cameron did consider reviving her character in future installments. They sure did have the resources to make that happen with the new plot of the story, but the actress was quick to put an end to our daydreaming because she declined the offer. Why would she even do that after all that Captain Trudy did for the plot of the movie? But to our dismay, her reasons were inarguable. In her interview, she reminded us that her character died as a martyr, and when she puts it that way, it does seem logical that Trudy's resurrection would have been overkill. It certainly wouldn't be right to take that honor from a soldier like Chacon. That wasn't the only explanation Rodriguez gave. She felt like her characters have been reviving a lot, and she doesn't want to play yet another resurrected character. And I get it. Her portfolio is chock full of characters who came back to life. For example, she came back in Resident Evil, in Machete, and even in The Fast and the Furious. In her point of view, none of her characters were supposed to come back, but they did. So the revival of yet another one of her characters just seemed wrong to her. Plus, doing these roles again and again would have just gotten her typecasted, which is something all actors are a little afraid of. But I'm not going to lie, turning down the chance to appear in another Avatar film was impressive, especially considering that the sequel swiftly became the third highest grossing film of all time. But this comes to show that Rodriguez doesn't do it for fame or money. She plays the character that she truly believes in. Sadly, this is where James Cameron's regret chimes in, because if he hadn't killed her off, there was a sure chance she would have been by Jake and Neytiri's side in the sequels. But that's all I have for James Cameron's confession of his regret over Michelle Rodriguez's death.